You guys ready? Yeah. Hang on.
I know.
Go
I'm
ahead.
ready. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm ready to do
Okay,
parts.
you're ready.
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Awesome. What I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to pull up a small little graphic, okay? I actually switched companies, so this is not in your company. And I'm going to just real quick grab the one that we did for our class. And we're going to pull up one little piece right here to talk about parts. Now, why would I pull this up to talk about parts?
A lot of people may want to take a picture of it.
Okay, cool. And then this isn't necessarily the world's sharpest image, but guess what we do in parts, okay? We count them. What else do we do with parts? And
Describe them.
we describe them, okay? What else do we do? Is there a cost and a price and in and an out?
Tax categories, in and out, everything.
Okay, great, awesome.
Go through the inventory, so.
So potentially we could name different ones, different things. Okay. So potentially we could have inflow, outflow. We could stack locations. How many do I have in location A, location B, location C? Say that you're doing something like that. Okay. Parts are huge. It's a huge part of the puzzle. When I say parts, you have to realize that it's literally a corp-wide setting, okay? What are some possible things that you could call your parts? What would you call your parts if you were selling something?
Volunteers.
Okay, maybe yours is a volunteer. Maybe that's what you're actually selling, or what it ends up being is what are you selling or what are you presenting to your customers? That's technically what your parts are, okay? So for you, it might be this.
Well, I did some out, like I did bottles and containers and preparations and bulk herbs. But then I thought consultation and classes would also be parts, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
So I would call yours products, to tell you the honest truth, okay?
Okay, products.
Products, and then there's a subcategory under that says, hey, am I a bottle? Am I consultation? Am I whatever? But that's still one of your products, okay?
Okay.
That's what I would call your particular thing, okay? Awesome. The reason that I brought this up, and we're going to kind of talk about it a little bit here and there type thing, but we need to kind of talk about parts. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the map and show you a quick little thing of how do parts work, and then we're going to actually start dealing with them. Who can tell me where parts would be at? It doesn't actually say the word parts.
How about objects and data over time?
Okay.
Stock and units.
Okay.
Could be a general inventory
Perfect.
pool.
Okay. Awesome. What we're gonna
Inventory.
do, right here, watch this. This little guy, your general inventory pool, is going to end up being your parts kind of department, okay? Now, I heard a couple other things like what's objects and data over time or what's stock units. Stock units are your serialized units. These are bigger ticket items, okay? Are we selling trailers? Are we selling vehicles? Heavy equipment, RVs, guns, whatever you're selling. It's a serialized inventory is under stock units, okay? In order for parts to kind of get into the system, guess what? They have to follow this logic. A part comes from a vendor, even if it's internal, like say manufacturing, eventually hits a PO, and eventually ends up in the pool. Does that make sense how that would happen? Okay, so if I wanted to enter a new part, say for instance, Cheryl, I'm going to take your thing. You offer classes and consultation. Can you just enter that? It would have to come from this. Internal vendor, so whatever your company name is, creates a PO, which then talks to this, and then all of a sudden you can get it in there. So lots of times people are like, I just want to enter my parts. Where do I enter my parts? Vendor, PO, parts. That's basically a sub of it. That's how you get it. It's in the middle there. You can't just launch this thing through walls. Click here and we're going to say, hey, this is a vendor we're looking for. And I'm going to look for the word Logan, L-O-G. I don't have it, okay? Now, I realize some of you are following along, and in order not to get multiple vendors, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So when we get, you can follow the entire way along. When we get to the very bottom, please don't click it, because otherwise we will duplicate the Logan training. So I'm going to go like this, add new vendor. I don't see it. It didn't come up under my search. Click. And I start typing it in here. Logan training. And then we could add some sort of address. It does require something here. So I'm going to put that in there. Something. realize I'm going speedy, okay? Just kind of bam, bam, bam. If I put something in there, if I go to try to pull a report, guess what? The only thing I can get back from that report is
What you put in.
what I put in, okay? So if I'm going fast and I'm like doing this, we'll let you do it. But guess what I get back out? I'm gonna get something, like when I try to do a PO, it's gonna say something, something. Yes,
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand this, because you're putting in Logan training, I'm putting in myself, so it's something I'm generating myself,
Okay.
like a class or a product that I
Correct.
myself am generating.
correct. All I was doing is just doing a first demo.
Okay.
We haven't bought anything from an outside product or anything. Ethan, do you have a question?
Yeah, your social security number there, it says, I noticed on your cell phone, it says does not print on expense. Does your social security number or your EIN number print on your PO if you put it in there?
No, they do not. This is for your information, okay? And ideally what you would do there is you would experiment, like, I wonder what happens here. And you go put it in. I'm gonna put this EIN number of this particular vendor, and then I'm gonna go pull this PO. Oh, I don't see it anyway, okay. I'm good to go on that. And I would say that's the best way to do it, is kind of experiment. If I put it in here, where does it show up? And like almost trick it and play with it. Like maybe you go XXXXXXX or something like this that's like big and bold and you can tell what it is. Don't turn every field to X's or big huge capital letters, but just like, where does this show up? And then you kind of experiment. This is what a play site is for. You get in there and you experiment. So that's technically hidden, and the only way I can get back to that is to edit that record or go to that particular record technique. Okay, that's a great question. So I have a couple things: Logan training, some sort of address, some sort of city, a state, and a zip. You can come all the way down, and I'm going to say active. I'm going to say add the payee. So I'm actually right back at the same screen. Why don't we do this just for kicks and giggles? Let's go back to the home page for just a minute. Okay. Say I do that exact same thing. Say I wanted to start the vendor level, and I clicked on it, and now I wanted to say, type in LOG, just like I just barely did, to see if this guy's in there. Hit enter. Oh, sweet. There's my vendor right there, okay? This is a great way. Once it's in there, it exists. The same thing is going to happen with your parts. Once you get a part in there, it will exist. It becomes a placeholder. And just like those tubes, lots of times people think my parts are my main objects. Your parts are technically a placeholder where we track ins and outs, costumes, and this actual thing, the tube that it goes through is what we're going to kind of call the part, okay? It just is the item that can service the ins and outs and tie it to location. Because otherwise it would get all sorts of crazy. Think of it as a placeholder. You have to have the part number placeholder because the costs are going to change and this is going to change and quantities are going to change, but you still need to run it through the placeholder, okay? Like the tube. Okay, so here's how I'm going to do it. Create a PO internally.
Sorry.
How do I fix this? I just got an error message. Sorry, you don't have the permissions to view or use this page.
Go to permissions.
All right, how would I do that? Talk me through it. Ethan, I need help. How do I get to permissions?
Oh.
Go home, go home.
Yes, home is the first thing.
Shannon knows.
Yeah, good call, good call. I want Ethan to do this. Ethan, we're at home page. We're trying to add a PO and it says no.
So I want to get to,
Okay, where are permissions tied to? What are we called? Are we called users? Are we called employees? Are we called...
we're called users, right?
Great, let's look for that. Let's look for that. Where would users be?
Okay, I got to click on it, so.
Click on users. And now you guys all have admin permissions, so you're going to want to go to your own spot. So go ahead and click on yourself.
So then, is this system maintenance?
Okay.
System report?
Actually, technically, a PO is a liability to your company. I'm purchasing, which means I owe. So that's a technical way to do it, but when we originally were categorizing it, this would technically be called a liability. If you provide something to me, even though I get it, I technically am liable back to you for the value. So that's why it would be under system liabilities, okay? So just as soon as you see the link, I'm on edit employee users and permissions. I happen to be on the Be More Logan account that I am, and I'm going to click immediately on system liabilities. Click. And there's a couple neat little things. Here's a basic PO. I'm just scrolling down just a little bit. Basic POs. And I'm also going to do,
Wouldn't you want internal bill POs too?
okay, we can click and click and click. It depends on what you're looking to do. Okay, there are 6 types of POs. Okay, what do the POs do? We're entering a new realm. We were talking about parts, and all of a sudden we're on POs. What happened? What happened?
It's part of the process.
Aha, it's part of the process. The vendor has to be tied to a PO in order to get something into that middle section, which is your general inventory pool. So we're actually using the PO as an entrance point to get into that parts category, okay? So a PO has a number of things. Real quick, I've got a bunch of cups here. What might be in a general PO? What would we want? First off, we're gonna need a main, okay? I'm not gonna even look at the necessary cup labels per se right this minute, but I'm gonna just kind of show it. Each PO would need a main, PO 14, PO 77, PO 366, whatever it might be, okay? We need a main. We're gonna stuff, eventually, a vendor in there. So a vendor is gonna automatically be connected to a PO, okay? What else might go on a PO? Line items, okay? This is a one-to-many. We can stack a ton of things in here. Oh, I'm just buying one little product. Oh, I'm buying tons of product. Line items, one-to-many, as many as we want. What else might eventually be attached to a PO?
Payment of some.
Payments of some sort. And actually, the cool thing here is the payments are actually attached clear over to the expense receipt. It creates a whole other sub thing, because that's where your money actually comes out of your bank. Okay, but you do have payments. What's one other thing that you might want for a PO? I'd like to document it. Scans, photos, something like that. Okay, got some scans and photos. What else might be a cool thing that we could put on POs? Okay, the reason I'm
You
stacking
can
this.
just track your history as well.
Uh-huh. So the system is going to automatically track who's adding items, who's changing items, who's doing what, okay? A system maintained history is going to be attached to that, alrighty? What else is going to be? I'm not trying to make it look big. What I'm trying to say is, guess what? We're going to build an object. Every single thing we do in Adilas is going to be a one-to-many object. It's going to be an object. What if you actually wanted to tie something into a PO? Either direct drop costing or to a customer that actually requested this thing that you specially ordered. Maybe a little bit of flex grid, huh? Click. Tons of different options, okay? And you're like, whoa, I can't even remember which ones are which. We have a main, we have line items, we have photos and scans, we have system histories, we have flex grid if we need it. We also have payments, which the payments actually have a little sub-connection out to expense receipts as well. That's how we end up getting that thing going. Any questions on that? Just kind of a quick little sum up of some of the compartments we're going to be sticking some stuff in for a PO. So you asked about internal builds is actually where this whole thing kind of came. Like, shouldn't we turn on internal builds? I was like, what is an internal build? Okay. And it's like, I have no clue. An internal build, a PO is a huge tool. So if the PO takes the vendor and it allows you to get in here, a PO in some ways is almost like a reverse shopping cart. If the customers have to interact with a shopping cart to deal with invoices and line items, guess how we deal on the other side? A vendor has to deal usually through a PO or a stock unit in order to get some sort of inventory in the system, okay? That's the inflow process. So the PO is almost the exact opposite of a shopping cart, but on the incoming side rather than the outgoing side. Does that make sense? Okay, an internal build. What it does is I take internal product and I mash and squish and bend and paint and cook and whatever I'm doing, and I come up with something else, okay? Imagine a giant grinder. If you drink coffee, like a coffee grinder. If you like a blender, you throw a bunch of stuff in there and you hit, and all of a sudden you have a slushy, okay? An internal build means I'm taking raw and I'm creating something else.
So like if I ordered herbs to come in, it's coming in from an outside vendor, but an internal vendor would be when I put it all together, so now I have a tincture that's sitting that I can sell out.
Okay, perfect. That's actually technically 2 POs. One, PO from vendor XYZ.
Right.
I got
An
herbs.
external
And
one.
I got raw product here, okay? All of a sudden, in order to take this raw product, I might have other raw products I have to mix it with. I'm going to use an internal PO to basically say, blender, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. Oh, wow, I have a magic tincture now, okay? That's what an internal build is, okay? An internal build could also be something like this. Say I buy in bulk, huge big bulk, and then I want to break it into smaller pieces. So what I'm technically doing is I'm buying from the customer, hey, thank you, I would like 2 cases of that. They sell me 2 cases, but I'm like, I don't sell it by the case, I sell it by the bottle, or whatever it might be. Technically what you do is you'd say, thank you, and then you use another PO and say, I'm going to grab 2 cases, and it's going to end up creating 48 bottles, and then I'm going to end up selling those things. That's how you internally manipulate your stuff. And it might sound interesting, but a lot of people actually do that. And technically that's all manufacturing is, depending on to what level you want to take that. I'm taking this plus this plus this, and I'm putting it together. Taking this plus this plus this, and attaching it to what I already put together. So depending on how you want to do this, this is technically a mini manufacturing model. It's called internal builds for POs. Okay. If you want to turn it on, go ahead. It's not going to hurt anything. It just adds another option when you actually go to create your PO. But if you like that option, that's super powerful. We can turn it on. Okay, we're right by another one that's a silver permission. So silver in the permissions means special. Okay. Okay, and a special PO, basically what it says is you can have multiple vendors. This is very common if you're buying one product from multiple vendors and you don't want to track it vendor specific. Say I like Snickers bars and I buy from Shopko and Walmart and Albertsons and I'm doing a Sam's Club, whatever it is, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a product called Snickers, okay? And then I'm going to purchase tons of different vendors, because as soon as you take something and you put it in a bin, a pot, a bowl, a bucket, it's really hard to tell, oh, that Snickers came from Shopko. As soon as you say, how are you going to display it or sell it, that tells you, am I vendor specific or am I not vendor specific? And it's called like a homogeneous product or a generic product. Does that make sense?
Homogeneous means what?
Homogeneous, homo means same, okay? So
from one vendor.
Okay, ideally what I would highly recommend if you're going to do a generic product is you create yourself as the main vendor and you name it however you want to. I'm going to go to my Snickers bar analogy. Actually, I'm going to go to hot tamales because I happen to have hot tamales, okay? So say I buy boxes and boxes and boxes. If I take these out and pour them into a thing, and then I go to some other company and I pour them into a thing, I'm creating a generic product called bulk hot tamales. I could buy them from anywhere, okay? I could buy them from anywhere. So basically what I would do in order to track it through the system is I would become the main vendor of this new bulk thing, okay? And for our example, we created a vendor called Logan Training. And then I would call it bulk hot tamales, and I'm going to sell it by the pound, okay? So I buy boxes and boxes and cases and cases, then I use an internal build PO, dump them all into this thing, and then I end up selling bulk stuff out the back.
So for whatever reason, I don't care to track the product by vendor.
So if you don't want to track it specific to vendor, I would recommend that you go with a generic scheme. In Adilas, what we do is we buy, or we have in the past, little magnetic card readers, barcode scanners, receipt printers, stuff like this. Well, I'm going to buy it from wherever the best darn value is, okay? And I call it printer, and I call it this. Like, we're not tracking tons and tons, and so I don't care if I got this one from Amazon, and this one from POS World, and this one from et cetera, et cetera. So I make a generic product, barcode scanner at such and such a level, and then I bring them in.
So I know my cost. So if I'm paying slightly different for 10 different vendors, I'm aware of my overall cost, but later on I might not even know what I paid.
Okay, here's the difference, okay? It depends on where it ends up. And remember those tubes type of thing? Any product that you take like this and you put it into a barrel, a basket, generally on the shelf, anything like that, I would say go with the generic, okay? Go with the generic, hey, this is my XYZ book, this is my such and such thing. Okay, go with the generic, and you get to create your own part number type thing. But if it's specific, and I'm like, this is my Pepsi product, and this is my Coke, and this is my, and if you always buy it from a specific vendor and you want to track it specific, that may be a spot where you're like, okay, I only buy this from a certain distributor that is vendor specific. And so you can mix and match, but hopefully your minds are kind of going a little bit in your
Yeah.
okay.
But generic would be in that special.
Okay,
Base.
what generic allows me to do is I can mix and match vendors. That's,
Right,
if
but
you're
it's-
gonna be
it's
doing
the
generic,
special POs.
eventually you're gonna do that, because guess what you're gonna do? Eventually you're gonna say, Snickers, I got X number of Snickers, and technically that's under my current vendor, but guess who I have to pay? I have to pay Sam's Club, I have to pay somebody like that. And so all of a sudden I have a slight disconnect between what the vendor of the current product is, my general Snickers, but I need to really pay Sam's Club type thing, or Costco, or whatever. Okay? And we'll show you that as we kind of get into it. Yes, Ethan?
Well, you started out by saying there are 6 types of POs, but I only see 3 here. Is that not relevant?
So basically, as soon as you say basic POs, we automatically say, oh, cool, we'll give you 2 of them. Okay? There's another permission if you have the parts admin permission, like you're an administrator over parts, that general thing. You get another one called an update PO. Alrighty? Then you can turn on the internal build.
Oh, I
which is
got you.
another-
You didn't say there's 6 types of POs. That's why I
There-
heard
there
six.
is-
There's
there-
6 types of permissions to get into POs. Is what you
Nope,
meant.
there is 6 PO types, okay? And there's probably 7 or 12 or 50
Yeah, yeah.
million, who knows, okay? There's a few different permissions in POs. POs, it's the incoming piece of this puzzle, okay?